this is from George. And his question or statement is I am 75 years old. What is my time horizon or withdrawal rate?
So, well, it's 75. There's not any one answer to this. You might, like, if you want to quantify things a little bit, there's a really helpful website, longevityillustrator.org. You could go there and see the distribution of your life expectancy. I mean, if we just ask, like, if you're in decent health, 75-year-old man in decent health, you're probably looking at a life expectancy in your late 80s at that point. So that could be another 15 years or so. But then we always talk about, you don't just plan to your life expectancy. You have to plan to something beyond that.
But we also don't know if he's married.
Right. We don't know that either. So just for the one individual, at 75, if you were planning, well, what if I live to 95? Of course, you can do that arithmetic. That would be a 20-year time horizon. If you want to plan beyond 95, you'd add on top of that. And so, but okay, now let's simplify and say we're looking at about a 20-year time horizon. What's the withdrawal rate on that? Well, that Bill Bengen style analysis would suggest with a 20-year time horizon, somewhere in the ballpark of 5% for inflation adjusted spending. But you could go higher than that if you're using a variable spending strategy. And that's where I suggested, even with the RMD method that I talk about in the retirement planning guidebook, looking at around 6.7% for that age. So we can't give you the exact number, but yeah, somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 7% is probably reasonable.
I would ask a follow up to this, Wade, and I'll let you actually like flesh it out more just because of my throat. But effectively, this also assumes that George is thinking about this and he's a total return person. And I just want to give people a level set that there's many ways to get right their retirement income, and it goes into like the RISA and your style. And so, I first off, there's no magic number. I think folks always want this magic number, quick and dirty, because that's the world we live in. And that's all right. There is none. But there's also many ways to get this right that has nothing to do with a withdrawal rate. You follow where I'm going with that, Wade?
Right. The whole conversation around what's the safe withdrawal rate, that is inherently a total return framing of the question of retirement income, that I'm primarily going to meet expenses through distributions from my investment portfolio. And I want to know what's the highest sustainable amount I can spend without having to worry about running out of money. But there's volatility with a portfolio, so there's no true answer to that. And so it really becomes, well, how much am I willing to make significant cuts to that spending in the future? If the more I spend a day, the more I have to be ready to potentially make cuts in the future. Where do I strike the balance there? Now the way around all of that is, if you're really concerned about outliving your money, and so I was answering that in a total return frame of, okay, plan through 95, that's 20 more years. Let's plan to spend it down over a 20-year time horizon. The alternatives are no. If you're income protection, if you're time segmentation, if you're risk wrap, well, especially if you're income protection or risk wrap, looking at reliable income sources to meet lifetime expenses. Make sure you've got your basics covered without having to worry about market volatility. And then you can more comfortably spend more aggressively from whatever is left in the investments, because it's for more discretionary goals. It's not to meet your essentials. And if you're time segmentation, you build a bond ladder for the upcoming time horizon to make sure you've got expenses covered over the upcoming years.
Yeah, to me, a more nefarious thing that happens and George, just know that I know this may not even be where you're coming from or anything like that. I'm just using this as an opportunity. But a more nefarious mindset that happens with somebody who's 75 years old and is thinking, hey, what can I withdraw, Ray? What can I withdraw here? No one is going to withdraw so their portfolio is at zero at 95, right? There's always going to be some slack left in there. And to me, the biggest mistake that someone could do is, okay, they're able to accomplish their goals, but they really just went chintzy on what they could withdraw, and they die with this unintended amount that could have been allocated much better for their own enjoyment, for their family's enjoyment during retirement. And I think many opportunities are wasted simply because of that impoverished, thinking of, oh, you know what I mean, I need to always have a cushion. I need to always have a cushion in case the market collapses and I need to withdraw money from. And there's many ways to account for that that will let you sort of lock it down and really enjoy, retirement significantly more. Wade, do you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, yeah. And the dominant paradigm in the consumer media is total returns for retirement, because it's total returns is what you generally do pre-retirement. And there's not always an appreciation about how things change post-retirement. And I don't think that does lead a lot of people to, if they're forced into a total return approach, relying on investing and market growth to meet their retirement spending, and they're ultimately not comfortable with that, they worry about outliving their money, and then they don't spend as much as they could. Whereas being able to build a floor of reliable income might provide a much stronger foundation for them to spend more in retirement and enjoy more in retirement. It's that idea of a license to spend that you get if you're worried about outliving your money, to have contractual protections backing that spending power in retirement. So it's not to say that total returns is right or wrong. It's just our research consistently shows about a third of the population is properly reflected with a total return approach, which means 2/3 of the population might also want to consider other strategies beyond just asking themselves, what's the safe withdrawal rate from an investment portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, our work will be done when we don't get that question. We get a question like, what strategy makes the most sense for me, et cetera, et cetera. Because to some extent, you could up your withdrawal rate significantly if, for essential expenses, you have some sort of bond ladder. You know what I mean? And then discretionary, you treat it more for total return. There's many ways to blend that will allow you to really maximize that spending. There should be a calculation way. You know how the Sharpe ratio is return per unit of risk? There should be a withdrawal per unit of headache. you know
There you go. I think you just got a new research topic.
no, but right, like, that kind of thing. That way you can just enjoy yourself.